Now, the African Development Bank and about a dozen international partners today in Cote d'Ivoire started a two-day forum that is focused on sustainable finance information disclosure in Africa. Now, that event provides an avenue for insightful discussions on best practices, challenges, and opportunities in Africa for senior government officials, capital market regulators, operators, and many others. And this is an excerpt from the first day of the forum.
Organizers from the African Development Bank and from Make Him Finance Work for Africa initiative for the great organization of the event. You may be familiar with two of the organizers, maybe less so with the MCDF. We are the Multilateral Cooperation Center for Development Finance, hosted by the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank in Beijing, China. It works a little bit like the Global Infrastructure Facility hosted by the World Bank. We bring concessional finance to prepare connectivity infrastructure projects and also develop capacity building programs through accredited implementing partners. These include 7 partners we have to date, of which a number in Africa. The African Development Bank was our very early accredited partner. We started cooperating about 3 years ago. We also work with the Africa Finance Corporation, relevant to the continent, also the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank that has clients here, and the Islamic Development Bank. We can support the preparation of sovereign projects, of PPP, transaction advisory, but also of private sector projects. We've engaged with the African Development Bank actively about 2 years ago. We now have a number of capacity building programs on facilitating trade finance in the East Africa community, on portals, connectivity infrastructure development, on environmental and social standards, safeguards. We also support project preparation for transmission lines, for green initiative for climate finance in Morocco, in Egypt also. Under the program led by Director Issa on the environmental and social safeguards, one of the pillars has to do with the establishment of this disclosure hub initiative. And the forum today serves a little bit as a launch for this capacity building program, of which we hope the information disclosure hub is going to be one of the major outputs.
It is a pleasure to be here today to discuss a topic that has become critical to Africa's future. That is the environmental, social, and governance disclosure and its role in attracting finance for sustainable development. Africa is at a crucial point in its development journey. We face immense challenges from climate change and social inequality to economic instability. But alongside these challenges lie opportunities for transformation, innovation, and growth. The importance of sustainable development cannot be overstated. It is no longer an optional add-on. It is a necessity if Africa is to thrive and not just survive in the 21st century. However, achieving sustainable development requires substantial financial investment, which will not come without trust, transparency, and accountability. So this is where ESG disclosure becomes a key factor in unlocking finance. And I want to touch on really 4 different areas around this topic. First is the need for sustainable development in Africa. So Africa's development landscape is complex. Sometimes it appears even contradictory. Our economies are growing, but so are the demands for infrastructure, energy, healthcare, and education. At the same time, we are on the front line of climate change, with millions of livelihoods dependent on natural resources, from agriculture to mining. So the sustainable development challenges in Africa include, amongst others, 1, addressing energy poverty while transitioning to greener energy. That's not always easy to do. Creating jobs for a growing population while protecting biodiversity. Reducing inequality and fostering inclusive growth. To meet these challenges, Africa needs to attract both public and private sector investments. However, investors today are looking beyond traditional financial metrics. They want to know how their investments impact the environment, society, and governance structures. The second area I want to talk about is the role of ESG disclosure in attracting finance. Why does ESG matter to investors? First is risk management. ESG helps investors identify risks related to climate change, regulatory changes, and social issues. For example, droughts and floods can disrupt agricultural supply chains in Africa, while poor governance can lead to corruption or political instability. Companies that manage these risks effectively are more attractive to investors. While when we think of risks, we often think of financial and legal risks for projects, ESG risks and mitigation is also a key risk to address, as the consequences could manifest in greater financial and legal risks in the future if not properly addressed. The second reason why ESG matters to investors is long-term value creation. Companies with strong ESG practices are more likely to build sustainable, resilient businesses. Investors are more confident in companies that plan for the future, use resources responsibly, and are committed to social equity. Third, reputational benefits. Companies and governments that prioritize ESG are viewed more favorably, enhancing their global reputation. This can also lead to easier access to international capital markets and large pools of impact-driven capital. And in some cases, it leads to more affordable financing and also financing with longer tenors. Last is the alignment with global standards. And once again, I'm just talking about why ESG matters to investors. As global standards for sustainability reporting, such as the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures and the UN Sustainable Development Goals become the norm, African countries and companies that adopt robust ESG disclosure practices will be more attractive to international investors. The third area I want to touch on is the state of ESG disclosure in Africa. So while ESG disclosure is gaining momentum globally, Africa is still lagging behind in terms of both policy and practice. Several key challenges remain. For example, regulatory frameworks. Many African countries lack comprehensive regulatory frameworks mandating ESG reporting. In some regions, business and financial institutions are not required to disclose ESG data, leading to inconsistencies and gaps in transparency. Second is capacity building. Many African companies, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, do not have the resources or expertise to implement and report on ESG practices. This results in a lack of comparable and reliable data for investors.